Can I record that? Can you say that again, Professor?
So how about take-home exam?
Remember, you never want to take home exam. You know why? Because they never end. Take home exams linger on in your sleep. You know, people almost jump off buildings. You don't want that. And the professors make them deliberately harder. So in-class open book, and the questions will be such that you really need to know this stuff. There won't be like, curveballs, minor detail. Really, this is stuff you absolutely, at the corner office on the top floor, when you are there, or virtually from your penthouse, this is stuff you really need to know. So, there will be an article, so tomorrow, next Wednesday, I'm going to email you, of course, but please bring your laptops, just in case I choose one of those articles I've sent you already. Yeah, Anushri?
Some of us have a digital book on the laptop. Is that okay if we open it on the laptop?
Yeah, it's open book.
Yeah.
So you chose the digital book?
It's easier to mark.
Oh yeah?
Search for stuff, like search for a word and it's there.
Wow.
Had a full day of class.
And so you can highlight it,
Yeah.
but you can't put posters.
Yes, you can. I mean, you can add bookmarks, digital
You
bookmarks.
cannot be like that one there. And plus the digital one corrects, the typos are corrected in that one, so some of them.
There are some online.
So Pooja, what's the deal with the mehndi?
My sister's getting married on Saturday.
I was wondering if you were.
No. No, right. Okay, great.
So how long will that last now?
Hopefully a while. It's still on, right? So hopefully it'll.
This is now turmeric?
It's not. It's Mendy. Right?
Yeah.
Henna, yeah.
Hannah.
Henna. Yeah. I don't know what henna's made out of, but I don't think it's turmeric.
So it's a professional person came over and did that to you?
Yeah.
Wow.
They did my sister's like all the way up here. She can't do anything. She just.
Well, how convenient. So like, sorry, I can't help you there.
I'm done winning from there.
Well, happy wedding.
Thank you.
When is it?
Tuesday. No, sorry, Saturday. Saturday.
All right, so let's do the homework. So this was a deep click, and next week you have the migrant mother for me, right?
Yes.
She's out there in the hallway. So what did you do for the homework? How did you, wasn't it a Seinfeld episode where they keep asking, what is funny about this cartoon? Was it a Seinfeld episode? There are two bears? No? Where have I seen this? There are two bears and everyone keeps asking, so why is this funny? And we are laughing, but we don't know why this is funny. So that's what I felt with this one. So what's the deal there? What did you get? The guys in a car, bunch of hoods who are saying the Fed's raised interest rates.
Basically, the rates are so low, no one's bothering to put money in a savings account, so they're waiting till the rates go up. More money will be deposited, and then they can actually rob the bank when there's money in it.
So the high interest rates favors. So this one here. So did you have this diagram for me? Supply of loanable funds.
Yep.
So high interest rates favors suppliers of loanable funds.
Mhm.
Okay, so then somebody else, a deeper click than that. Thank you, Nick.
Banks are more willing to loan out money, which means it increases and then theoretically they can get in the bank.
Yeah. But IBAR, if you're doing a soft landing, so people are going to be borrowing.
With high rates, maybe the stock markets and bond markets will fall, so there's a lot of uncertainty over there, and people will probably deposit cash in bank.
This diagram would have been a great one. Okay, come on, talk to me. So using this diagram as starting point. Come on, Chris, help me here. Eric, what's your gentleman in the cap, what's the name? Eric, see, I thought I had it. Langdana is on. People don't respond when I call. So like Langdana doesn't know. Did I get it right or not? Did you got a 90 something in the exam? 90? Well, close. So come on, help me here. Starting this.
The aggregate demand curve would
Yes.
go to the left.
So here we are. So the Fed's doing this number, and so investors are getting out on top. And so large sums of money, flow of funds should be leaving the stock market and moving into, you want to get out. The economy is slowing down. Fed's going to do this 6 times. So you're taking it as profit taking. And you're basically parking the money. Now here we go. Now let's take Mito's thing. Now let's marry that into Nick's comment. And now we're gonna leave it in the savings account. Big fat, the bank's gonna get fatter. Dan, yeah.
I thought it was, I don't know, now I feel like I'm way off, but I thought it was satire, right? There's no actual deposits at the Federal Reserve. So.
Would you say that sentence again?
So there's no actual, like, increased deposits at the Federal Reserve. They're waiting for, like, flow of funds to go into the Federal Reserve Bank in the part 2, right? But they're, instead at the bottom, like, waiting for interest rates to go up. All that's doing is increasing reserve requirements.
Oh, that's such a deep click though. We're gonna do that next week. So for you, Dan, next week after the exam, when I do that 1-hour session, we're gonna do chapter 11, reserve requirements, FOMC. So are those guys outside the Fed? Which bank are they standing outside in the car?
National Bank.
Okay, so they're outside a private bank, Dan. They're not outside the Fed.
I missed that one.
Yeah, so that was a very deep click though. So basically this is it. So money is gonna leave the stock market, people are gonna make banks even fatter, interest bearing accounts, and so that's why these guys are going to go in and steal the money. Not super funny, but I figured it was a homework. But see, the thing is, if you're reading the New Yorker, was it the New Yorker, Nitya?
Yes.
You have to act like you kind of know what's going on. Like, oh, this was hilarious. So they all say that, but 90% of them have no idea what those, what the 2 bears are doing or.
Exactly. The cartoons, they are more intuitive, I would say. They're not funny, they're just meant to make you think, I would say.
So all readers kind of feel good.
They are in the know
Yeah.
probably, yes.
Yeah. All right.
But
So,
I don't also get most of them.
so anyway, that's what I was looking for, this diagram. Okay, so that's item number 1. So then most of you get that? Some of you got that? No? Greg?
Yeah, I thought it was like the Federal Reserve and they were waiting for them to pull the money back in so they could rob the Federal Reserve, but.
Oh, that's like the Dan comment. So
Yeah.
like the Fed sucked the money, liquidity out of the economy.
Yeah.
That's what you thought too, Solomon?
Yeah, we were just talking about
What did he say?
it. Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah.
That's what we were just talking about that.
Suddenly Solomon's become all shy on the last day. What's he saying?
So we were just talking about what it meant, like, so it means that the people deposit more money into the
Yeah.
savings accounts.
So next week, bring your laptops, folks. Was there a hand? Did I have a? Nick?
So does demand of loanable funds increase then?
So basically, what you have here is no, and so demand for loanable funds. So as interest rates go from I0 to I1, people put more money in savings accounts, which is the Nick comment. But as interest rates go up, the demand for loanable funds falls, and that's what slows the economy down. That's what's supposed to. So people are going to say, you know what, the heck with this. Like what happened here with Dana, right next to you. Dana said, you know what, the heck with this. I'm not going to buy a house now. 5%? Who the heck wants to buy a mortgage? It's been stuck there. They don't have to refinance later on. What happened with it? And so, slowing things down. That's what a soft landing is. Okay, so page 268 of your books, if you have them, or digitally. We are going to look at the supply side model, and we're going to maximum power. So, hoping you kind of came close to this homework. By the way, I was talking to one of your classmates earlier. So remember when we talked about the political events, Alina? So we talked about how Biden should have jumped over from Poland and had a photo op with Zelensky. Remember that? Yes, no?
Mhm.
And Boris Johnson did that. And so now the Biden government administration is thinking of, they're going to have meetings to discuss if he should meet Zelensky and improve the CBAR, not the morale of the Ukrainians on the whole planet. Big thinking, logical meeting. So the cycle of one moment has, of course, long passed. But it was very interesting, I thought. Clearly, the conversation we had might not be remembered. Huh? Thank you. You remember, right, Dana? Thank you. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to bang out the diagram. And let's kind of look at those questions. Page 268. So we're going deep into the supply side model now.
Sorry, Professor, is chapter 10 right? And is it the questions at the end?
Yes.
Okay.
So you have a book on the build device?
Yeah, it's like on the Kindle, yeah.
Wow.
But the page numbers don't,
Oh, the page numbers don't match?
no. So yeah, so that's fine, I'll go to it again.
All right, so here's the supply side model. Stay with me now. Production function N0, Y0, N0, labor demand, labor supply, capital W0, B0, YY reflector, rational expectations, aggregate supply, aggregate demand. Did you see those great articles that were sent by your classmates? B0, Y0, Y0 for emerging economies. Again, not very common. We discussed last time why it's harder for emerging economies. So Keynesian aggregate supply, aggregate demand, P0. Okay, so here's the Keynesian, the supply side stimulus, very different from the Keynesian stimulus. It's so here's this one, example. So there's no big focus on M or G. It's cuts in business taxes, cuts in income taxes, deregulation, removing intrusive regulation, leading to productivity increases, innovation, supposedly very controversial. Keynesians will jump on you the moment you say this. We talked about that, and higher. The participation rate actually changes in this model, which is, and the supply side has woke up the labor demand and labor supply, as we saw last time. So this labor supply, this is increasing productivity, and higher. Y higher. So this is Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, Angela Merkel, Suleiman the Magnificent, Benjamin Netanyahu. Here we are, and here we are. Mark, did you get a chance to look at the video from last week? Okay, so it's follows the book pretty closely. So Y higher. And so this is what we did last week, Y higher. So look at this, and P lower. And this was disinflation. So this was say 1% inflation, and this was say 4% inflation. So prices are still growing, but growing by less. And so here we have Y higher. So for Keynesian economies, it's done rarely because this is a very big deal. And it's tough to deregulate and privatize. In Keynesian economies, you have to privatize first and then deregulate. So it's harder, and we talked about this last time. So let's focus on the top 4 diagrams. This is the supply side story. Focus on tax cuts, deregulation, productivity, so participation rate. And let's now try and poke holes in it. Very different model. The whole philosophy is different. This is the government backing out, leaving business alone, not being intrusive, giving you back your money, giving you back your not regulating you. So, very different. Keynes, direct involvement, government stepping in, generating multiplier effects, large G, large M. This one, standing back. So, here let's poke holes into it. Page 268, number 1. The supply side model is just a transitory fix. Once the deregulation is all done, what happens then? So, here was the deregulation leading to, so this is the airlines can fly anywhere. They don't have to fly to C, D, E. Banks can pay any interest rate. They don't have to just pay 5.25%, which they had to do before. You can stay open on Sundays. You can lay off your workers whenever you want to. You can put that iPhone on sale. It's all up to you. You don't need permission. And so deregulation leading to increase in productivity, leading to increase in innovation. So here is the first critique. What happens when the deregulation is all done? We deregulated airlines, trucking. Matthew, what can I read for you?
All 3.
Okay, so increase in deregulation, leading to an increase in productivity, leading to, you look different today. Something is missing. A mask.
What's the rule now? We supposed to be wearing masks? What's the decision?
I don't know.
Okay. Good to know.
I think it's becoming androgynous. Right? I'm still breathing it, and I'm going to be gagging on it like in an hour from now and choking, and I'll be killing I'm going off to Europe with 60 people in a few weeks. So I'm bracing for that. I can't afford any. And for commencement, I'm going to have to wear a mask. I'm trying.
Did you get your first shot?
I got my 4th shot. Dr. Victoria, should I do my 5th shot? Because when my wife went for her 4th shot, lo and behold, there was a little slight slot in there. They said, 4th or 5th? And I said, it's on the form.
So I think you're coming up with, if you guys can now include some of the newer variants, so you're better off just not getting into those right now.
What did she say?
Newer variants, you're better off.
They're working on a new vaccine that'll include the newer variants.
Oh, so I should wait?
Well, you can get the 6 week.
I had a dean here who's gone now to Kent State, but he used to tell me when I just joined, he would say things like, Farooq, you want to agree with me now? Or you want to think about this for a few weeks and agree with me later on? And so when I talked to you guys about the 4th shot when I met you, right, remember that? Does anyone remember anything I've been saying? Dana, did I not talk about the shot?
Yes.
Is Dana the only one who remembers? Okay, so I told you in February, and now the whole world is doing the fall shot. Yes, no?
Yeah, it's recorded.
It's recorded, right? And so now I'm going to take the 5th shot. So by July, August, you'll all be doing the 5th shot. All right. So here we are: deregulation, increase in productivity, increase in innovation. What happens when everything's deregulated? So now we have the electron, the spectrum, bandwidth. Once that's done, there's nothing left to deregulate. Does this model shut down? So the Keynesians go, okay. First of all, the Keynesians will say, I'm going to take you there today, Princeton. This is never shown. Chicago, this is all that's shown. Princeton, they will go, nonsense. These guys were saying that the dot-com economy, the internet happened. This is the internet story. Absolute nonsense. So I'm going to take you there. But come on, how do you answer this? Once the deregulation is done, what happens to this model?
Growth will be lower.
Yeah. But does this model die? I mean, do you turn off the lights? Do these guys then wear white robes and recite poetry? And is it like over? Damn. The supply sider, right?
Then it falls to private industry to continue to innovate.
Wow. Wow. So basically, no. The response will be, once the deregulation is done, it's for you guys to come up with the next big thing. Is it the post-lithium battery? Is it artificial intelligence 3, 4, 5, whatever the latest thing is? Is it a new form of energy? Constant innovation. So deregulation is just the first step. For emerging economies, it's privatization, which is the first step. So constant innovation, and that is the problem. That's the hard part. Manufacturing, Keynes, infrastructure, that's the easy part. Constant innovation is the hard part. So innovation should take over. So nothing, the problem, the model does not die. The second one, the emphasis on technology is misplaced. We have diminishing returns to technology. How small a mobile phone will we finally make? How many laptops do I buy? How many iPhones? iPhone 15, iPhone 19, iPhone 25. So the decreasing returns to technology. These guys are betting on the wrong horse, is what the Keynesians will say. I mean, think about it. Back in the day, we could store 1,000 photographs on our phones. Now, we can store, what, 5,000, 10,000, and thousands of movies. And so, which we never watch. We store all these pictures, we can never find them. You know, we go on these trips and ask the students, can I have like 5 photographs from the website? Because I think each student had 10,000 or some ridiculous number. They couldn't. The fruit gonna narrow it down. Just give me 10 photographs. They couldn't. Just what are you looking for? I said, humans in front of like companies, so it doesn't look like it's a big party, you know. So, you know, Boeing. No. Oh, we have to look for it. Nothing happens. And so these guys are saying it's decreasing returns to scale. How many more iPhones will we buy? How many more laptops? How many movies can we store? You know, so what's your response to that?
As far as tech goes, everything's moving to a subscription service. They're finding a different way to monetize the technology. You don't need to innovate if you can just charge a subscription for it.
But why would somebody even subscribe to Netflix Prime?
Well, not that, but if you require an operating system to have a subscription, you need to pay it to use a computer. It can be that simple.
But we're talking about new technology. You know, why have a new operating system? Operating system 9.0, 10.0, and the difference between them is not that big. Plus, look at our own laptops. Nick, you're probably using 20% of what this can do, maximum, right? I'm just guessing, maybe even less. So come on, how do you respond?
I mean, when iPods went out, iPhones came in, and now they are talking about virtual 3D classes and all those things. So I mean,
The 3D glasses though, didn't the 3D glasses come and go? The Google glasses?
yeah, but I think they are in coming years they are trying to
Yeah,
get.
so that's the new big thing?
It's whatever the new big thing is, it's not there yet.
So please understand, the response would be, forget iPhones. Forget operating systems. There'll be, maybe it's healthcare. maybe you'll be able to do physical examinations using a platform. You know, you just, Dr. Victoria is going, oh my God, that's the end of my world, right? And so it could be healthcare, it could be nanotechnology, it could be something that we can't even imagine right now. So forget iPhones and iPods and it's could be something we don't even know.
Professor, one comment here. So you mentioned that Europe was following the supply side of the model, but for example, one thing I recently heard, and talking about technology, they are embarking into a program to make chips that are based on light transmission instead of electrons.
Could that be the next one?
And the government is gonna help the consortium,
Right.
the consortia of the industry by giving like $500 million.
Yeah. So Jose, for you, Jose, after the exam next week, what he's talking about is strategic trade, which is what Biden is trying to do for semiconductors here, where the government gets involved in the story and figures out how we can do innovation in a new generation semiconductor chip, a post-lithium battery, using our taxpayers' money, throwing it out there, and trying to create a champion industry. The Europeans tried that with the A380, that large plane. They tried it earlier with Concorde. So we're going to talk, it's called strategic trade, and let's see how that works. But that's what Biden is doing with semiconductors here. Next class, after the exam. I'm going to drag it in from that trade class. So the question is, the answer is, there'll be technologies we can't even imagine. And again, all of those, we have to wait and see. How can supply side, okay, what about overheating and WiMAX here? What about upper limits? What's the upper, come on Matthew, what's the upper limit in this? Neil, help me here.
There's no
Chris, help me here. Eric, help me here. Connie, Jessica.
There is none.
There is none. There is no WiMAX. There is no maximum. The sky is the limit.
Well, there's only so many people though.
Wow, who is this?
There's only so many people that could be in the labor force.
So let's click on Greg. So wait. What are you talking about, Langdana? There's a finite number of workers. You know, remember full employment on WiMAX, which we saw in class? There. How is that going to work? Robots, or global trade, immigration, or somebody in Vietnam is doing your taxes. Somebody in Bangalore is reprogramming your heating system. Innovation. So, go WiMAX. What about resources? Water, oil, wouldn't that run out?
Yes, but they think no. And we operate in a way that suggests that we don't think it's gonna run out. But they are finite,
So Sarah, you're saying that they're going to run out?
eventually.
What will these guys respond with?
The innovation can also take place, for example, like wind power, something like
So for these, the response will be, we will come up with alternate sources. There will be wind power, there may be water powered batteries, separating hydrogen and oxygen. So, yeah, Dan?
No, I just scratched my eye, I'm sorry.
So there you go, they've avoided that one. So there's no Ymax, there's no overheating. We will see that after, how about bubbles? I'm going to show you bubbles, because keep in mind, listen carefully now, this model, the movement in the supply curve comes from the production function and the labor market. So the parents of the supply, the aggregate supply curve, if you will, are the labor market and the production function. The parents of the aggregate demand curve are IS and LM. And so that's the AD. And you will see that if the aggregate C bar and I bar is gone out of control up there, what happens to the IS curve up there? If C bar has gone crazy?
Moves to the right.
To the right, right? Yes, no?
Yes.
And what happens in the aggregate demand?
Goes to the right.
Tangles out, and so remember this, we'll do a survival guide, but so the aggregate demand is pulled up by the AD, but by the ISLM, and so yes, you can have a sap bubble in this world too. So this world can show you sap bubble, because that's the aggregate demand that suddenly goes berserk, goes bananas, and goes up there. Because of C bar and I bar gone crazy. So the parents of the aggregate demand are IS and LM. The parents of the aggregate supply are these two guys. And separate the two, don't get confused by those shifts. The supply side model is useless. Note how the US went totally Keynesian since 9/11. I told you, on 9/12, 9/13, George W. Bush hired Greg Mankiw at Princeton, supply side major Keynesian economist. So next day we went to deep Keynes, inner temple Keynes. Remember, his dog was called Keynes. So this model is useless in 9/11 situation. Comments? Exogenous shock, 9/11, George W. Bush, Keynesian, next day. The country pivots to big G, big M. So come on, what do you think? Nick,
It's useless.
Frank, me, sorry Nick,
You're saying if this is useless?
well, that's the quote in the book, I think, right? Yeah.
Well, you said that, after 9/11, the government had to do something, so that's why they stepped in, so, the Keynesian method had to work.
So click on Nick, Ruchi. Shravan, Helena.
Could it be that the aggregate supply curve shifted back over?
So basically, this model here, this model is a huge deep click comment. This whole model with the aggregate supply moving out, remember this folks, when you're in your corner office on the top floor, it's a long-term structural model. There are no buttons to press in this model. This doesn't happen overnight. It started with Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, one more time, began the deregulation. Jimmy Carter brought in Paul Volcker, who shut down M, pushed the aggregate demand up, no M. Paul Volcker was from Chicago. You know, glowering 6'4", cigar smoking guy. And so then Reagan, and Bill Clinton, and finally, after all those administrations of deregulation, privatization, deregulation, low taxes, deregulation, and then finally Bill Clinton, Netscape browser and internet. And so it's a long-term strategic structural model, no buttons to press. So this model is no good. There's nothing in this toolbox for 9/11. For the supply, for an exogenous shock, time, nothing. Supply side has vanished on 9/12. W went Keynesian, hired Greg Mankiw, we swung to Keynes. That was the only solution because the Keynesian model said we need G. You know, we had C bar down, I bar down, and so we need G, we need M, we need C bar, we need a benevolent government to step to the line and say, we are in charge, we know how to fix this. We're gonna throw money at the airlines, at insurance, at infrastructure. We're gonna pivot away from the Soviets towards the new bad guys, after 9/11, and of course now we're pivoting back to the Soviets, the Russians. And so, Keynes.
So I have a question. So say you had a supply side model, right? And this 9/11 thing happened. And you throw G and M. Wouldn't inflation increase
No.
just because you had a supply side model and based upon that theory?
That model's gone. On 9/11, that will go. That's the thing with macro. The models are not sacrosanct. Come on, this way. And Keynes' supply side has vanished from 9/11 to 2009-10. Supply side has vanished. You would hear of them. I used to joke that, you know, I was in Hillsborough then, and I would joke that sometimes late at night, my headlights would catch supply siders running behind bushes. You know, it came out only at night near Wawa and near 7-Eleven, and I kind of joke around like that. They vanished, and then they started bubbling back up. So there's nothing in here for an exogenous shock. Next one, Dell and Walmart. So I had a student who got a job at Dell, number 2 or 3 at Dell, and he said Michael Dell would come into his office every Wednesday and say, Anthony, what do you have for me? And Anthony McKenzie used to say, all right, Michael, this is what I have. Because remember, he said he used to ask the class, he used to come and speak here. He would say, what kind of company is Dell? Then people would go, IT company, technology company, innovation company. He'd go, no, supply chain company. Dell, Walmart, Amazon, they live and die by the supply chain. And as we heard, today and in the future, products live and die not necessarily by how good they are, but how good their supply chains are. It's not just the product, it's the whole supply chain that is the product now. And so it's one supply chain compared to another. And so every Wednesday, Anthony McKenzie had to figure out, whoop up, new increase in productivity. He would tell Michael, okay, here's what we do, Michael. Because he said, look, you explained to us that Dell only owned the laptops or computers for about 40 minutes. You would get your order, parts would come to Dell, they would be at Dell for 40 minutes. And then FedEx, which was inside Dell, would handle the shipping and servicing. FedEx would handle some of the post-sale servicing. So Anthony had to figure out, okay, we'll combine those 2 suppliers who are outside Houston into one. Move the one from Taiwan over closer into Dallas. And boss, we can do that. And so we will do that. And prices will come down a little bit. And so that's how Walmart, Dell, Amazon, constant productivity increases. And Anthony would say, sometimes for Rocky, he would say, I got 2-3 good ideas, I would ration them. I wouldn't tell Michael that, I got 3 ideas. Keep them off my back for 3 weeks. So every week he had to go show him, constant productivity. Okay, G. Is there no role for G here? Is there absolutely no role for G in the supply side model? And so this is a huge deep click. People who don't really understand supply side economics get this wrong. So does G not matter here? And so Keynesians will go, what nonsense is this? How can G not be relevant? I mean, come on. That's just complete nonsense. And the answer is, yes, there is a role. Believe it or not, a role for G in the supply side model. Can you guess what that would be?
Research and innovation, to spend money for research.
Louder, louder.
And spend money for research and innovation.
So click on Mitchell. So he's in the right diagram, Solomon.
So I think it's similar to what Biden's doing with Intel, where they're investing money for said strategic trade. That's G, right? And it's going.
What kind of G is this in our language?
Subsidy?
Yeah. Don't move your hands around, which I'm gonna damage it here. Good G, yes. So here we are, so only good G. What is that good G for supply siders? For supply siders, this is not just cash for clunkers. This is not checks to help you with your mortgage payment. This is not payments to help you for food allowance during COVID or during bad times or the subprime crisis. No, that's not the kind of G they like. They don't like transfer payments. They like G that only is for an increase in long-term productivity and innovation. So, the power grid, cybersecurity, NSF grants, research grants, basic infrastructure. So the G is in their story. Do not get fooled. There is G, but it's a different kind of, this is why you have the big battles between Democrats and Republicans. The Republicans make a big noise about transfer payments, unemployment benefits, even during COVID. Remember, they were not going to increase unemployment benefits and this whole drama. And so they are for long-term G. And so this is in their world, this, you will only see this in this class. This is good G can increase long-term productivity. So the government spends on serious cyber security. So your companies do not have to lie awake at night and spend resources and hire people to make sure that you're not getting hacked by the Russians or whomever. NSF grants. So research grants. So what happens in this story here is any G that goes, increases productivity, innovation. And so the example that I can give you is that venture capitalists, they will not fund, they're not good at funding upstream research. Venture capitalists typically will fund research, they can see the prototype in their hand. So you go to them in the golf clubs, and there you are, and you show them, here's the prototype of this new post-lithium battery. And they go, wow, oh man, heavy too. You know what? I can put 15 million in this. You know, let's order first. Waiter, let's order first, and then, yeah, there's a special. Specials are on that page. So they go into that. But if you showed them, back in the country club, you show them, check out this formula. Look at that large molecule. No, open that, spread it over. Yeah, I know those are the daily specials, but let's roll this out. Check out this large molecule. Look at that matrix, it goes to 0. You know the implication of that? Not gonna happen. it will go. You know, the tilapia is actually very good here, so it's not going to happen. And so the thinking is Uncle Sam funds this upstream research in the lab, the math, the equations, NSF grants to get it going. And then as the prototype testing happens, as the pilot programs happen, we bring it for venture capital funding. So NSF grants. So these guys will say, we're not all for cutting G back. Yeah, shut down public TV. Who wants to watch, what was that show about that British thing? Downton Abbey. Who wants to watch Downton Abbey? Shut all that down. That's bad G. Good G is this. So please understand that there is a role for G, it's a different kind of G here.
When you increase your G, right, based upon your IS curve will move to your right, and then your P will increase because of that. So innovation takes time. I mean, you'll keep on throwing money, hoping that the innovation will happen. So, I mean, how sustainable would that be?
So first of all, keep in mind, I'm going to show you, we're going to do an article from your laptop, but the Y has going up too. So the size of the tax revenues should be going up too. So I'm going to take you there in just a few minutes. But going back to something he just said, okay, so that's the good G, innovation. So earlier you mentioned that once you deregulate in this model, there's constant innovation. Let's go back to something he just said. How do we know that? So Keynes will go with, how do we know that? You're saying no G from the government, no M, we back off, we give these guys the tax cuts, we stand back. How do we know that your companies are going to come up with the next big thing? How do we know that our kids have more innovation than the Chinese kids, have more information than the Ukrainian kids, have more information than the Czech kids, and so on? How do we know that? How do we know America can constantly do How do you answer that?
It's safe haven.
We are a safe haven. Thank you. So yes, we get the global capital, maybe some other global brains. But how do we, the cases will go, you are banking on this. This is your thing. We leave it alone and we will come up with the next big thing. But what if, how do we know that?
Private companies have to deliver for shareholders, so you have to continue to innovate to deliver a profit that's the capitalist do.
So what Dan is saying is that it's an Adam Smith solution, which you're talking about, that's going to drive them earnings per share, it's going to drive constant urge to innovate. How successful have we been though? Yeah. There was a hand here?
I was gonna say Adam Smith, essentially the fact that we're structured to incentivize but to your point, we haven't been super successful recently.
I mean, South Korea has been a monster in innovation. It constantly gets ranked #1 in innovation recently. Israelis are doing great in innovation. So the answer here is Indiana Jones. Have you seen The Last Crusade? Yeah. So remember in Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade? If you haven't, tonight I'm sending you a link. If you're one of the 9 people on the planet who have not seen The Last Crusade, we'll send you the link. See, Anushri has. I'm sending you a link tonight.
The whole movie, or
It's a YouTube link, just of this part I'm telling you about. So basically, there's a part when there's a big chasm, and he has to get across it urgently. Somebody's dying. And so he doesn't know what to do, but essentially, if he has faith, then what's the expression? There's a leap of faith. So he has to get across this deep chasm, but he will only survive. He has to make a leap of faith, but he has to believe. So he jumps into this chasm, and interestingly, there's a bridge there, which you couldn't see. And so that's what this is. It's a leap of faith. So constant innovation, I don't know. We have been great in innovation. Most of the planet's big innovations have come from here. But we've it's been a while since we had something really major. So leap of faith, that's all I have is get the ecosystem right, do the right G, stand back, deregulate, and hope that our kids who are innovating are smarter than those kids there who are innovating, and we get the next post-lithium battery or whatever the next big thing is. So that's all that I have. There is no guarantee. In the Keynesian model, there was a guarantee, there was a multiplier effect. You could calculate the multiplier effect. And I don't think I gave you this nifty formula, and Dr. Victoria, I was thinking about you. I actually worked with a hospital in New Jersey who was getting a grant from the state, some 10 million, 15 million, and they asked me, how will it affect the region? And I said, okay, we have to calculate the multiplier effect of that. And so we did. So we showed, okay, if the state of New Jersey gives some hospital 10 million, then that part of New Jersey will grow by whatever. There'll be ambulances, there'll be restaurants, there'll be a hotel, there'll be X-ray facilities, more employment. And so this great formula, multiplier, is 1 over 1 minus the MPC. So if you know the MPC is say 0.6 for Central Jersey, then you calculate the multiplier. And so then you can actually say, yeah, if you throw 10 million in Middlesex County, multiply, the MPC is 0.6, multiply, what does this work out to be? 2.5? What? 2.5? So multiplier is 2.5, so you put in, it's 2.5 times the economy that will grow if you put in 10 million. And so we actually banged this out and they got it. So just like, so for Keynesians, there was something like this to point to. For these guys, there is nothing. It's a leap of faith. It's a leap of faith. This is more like a philosophical thing. It's a long-term structural model. Yeah, there were some hands.
I think I was just gonna make a comment on the kind of like leap of faith idea, because I think like as the whole world like goes into like, I agree that the multiplier effect is more of a regional, like it has distinction, but as the world goes into innovation and globalization, like the lines are so blurred that like nobody owns anything anymore. And I feel like as things go more that way, it's just gonna be more and more blurred.
And so the bottom line here is, so Keynes' supply side?
I don't know yet. I think I'm more Keynesian, but
What you're saying is that the G and the M, they're all global, but I hear what you're saying.
yeah.
So it's, and even the economies, when we talk about the hospital story, right? So I was computing Central Jersey multiplier effect, but countries don't really matter, or at least for a while they weren't mattering, it was regions. But I think after the Russian invasion, we're going to see countries being more important, maybe. Then,
I don't know, I have a philosophical question maybe. I mean, I'm coming from a different country, and I see that in America, like the innovation and I would say the chase after success and productivity is very high, more than everything that I've ever seen.
thank you. This is good, I'm feeling better already.
It's good, or some of my friends will say like, I don't know what they're chasing after, and so it depends how you look at it.
So you know what, so when I was teaching, I taught in France for a period of like 9 years, and so when I first would get to France, I would be like, what is wrong with this country? 2.5 hours for lunch, gas stations would close, post office would close. Then after a few weeks, I was like, this is civilized. Then I'm back in New Jersey, I'm having my peanut butter sandwich on the turnpike between Newark and New Brunswick. I'm thinking, something wrong with this country. What am I doing here? And so, yes. And sadly, sorry to jump in, but you guys in the corporate world, what is with all these meetings you constantly have? And I'm thinking, is what is the real productivity in corporate America? What are they doing? You know, there are large groups of people having meetings that go nowhere. And so I thought COVID would kind of make productivity go up, but it's coming back in, you know, and so I worry. And I told you, I'm the other opposite. I have my dean yelling at me like, Farooq, how come you never have meetings? And I'm like, because I have meetings with 2 or 3 people, or and I get it done. I don't feel the need to have a Wednesday morning, 11 o'clock meeting and sit around and waste time. Just venting here, sorry. Have I answered your question?
No, I didn't ask my question.
Oh.
My question is, I see the US more Keynesian. I mean, that's how things are going now, right? So
Right now with Biden.
Yeah, there is M, there is G, there is high productivity.
So just for you real quickly, Biden is this, but Biden is acting like he's going to do that by throwing some money at innovation. So, thank you, go ahead.
And Europe, for example, is supposed to be more supply
Okay,
side, right?
so, you know, let me take you to the Europe story. Perfectly timed. You never will ask me the question, I know that. So let me, okay, finish. Go ahead.
So, what you're saying here, the supply siders, they are more into innovation and productivity.
They have to be, they have to be.
But on the other hand, Europeans are a little bit average in their behavior. I mean, here there is like chase around excellence, but it's Keynesian here, so I'm kind of.
So basically what she's saying is that right now we are Keynesians in an administration, but we all act like crazy supply-siders.
Yes.
You know, we work so hard. Europe, you're saying that they act like the supply-siders, but they're having lifelong unemployment benefits and 3-hour lunches and so on. Wow. Okay, let me take you to Europe. Perfectly timed, because that was next on my list, Langdana. Has Zaki written some algorithm for you, so figure out what Langdana is going to do next? By the way, he's working on the algorithms, Zaki is.
Which one? Every time something else.
He sent me an email. He's working on our algorithm for fake news. Okay, here is the Europe story. Thank you. When we met, I showed you the Europe diagram. This is the Europe story. So when the Eurozone happened, keep in mind, the Eurozone is different from the European Union. What's the big difference? Come on, guys. The Eurozone, European Union.
The Eurozone uses the euro. The European Union is like a governmental organization.
Yeah. So the Eurozone is a bunch of countries, I think 20, with one common M. One common monetary policy coming from Frankfurt, European Central Bank. That's the Eurozone. So Newark, New Brunswick, Camden, all the room temperatures are controlled by Camden, Rutgers Camden. One M. The European Union is much older, it's a free trade zone. Border crossings, Brussels is very powerful. And Brexit was to take UK out of the European Union. Brits were never in the Eurozone. Okay, so Eurozone, one common M, very controversial. And the reason they managed to pull this off so long and against all the odds is there were 2 equations at that time. So when they huddled together, which countries were given M? Can you imagine? What was the thinking that all these countries said, we let the Germans do our M. We have lost our own ability to change our own interest rates. Can you imagine us saying, let the Canadians change our interest rates? It was that powerful. Why? Because when all these, listen very carefully, and I've said this before, when all these countries coalesced to have one common M, there were 2 things then that changed. One thing was Germany. When all this was happening, Germany was 1/3 its size. There was a wall. It was only West Germany. So the French were okay with that. So were the Italians. So were the Greeks. Then suddenly the wall comes down and they're all marrying together and suddenly, whoa, who are you? Germany is this huge thing now. That wasn't part of the plan. That's one. So they could handle 1/3 Germany when they were marrying into Germany. Remember, Germany they were marrying into was tight M, great tight end because of the hyperinflation. The Germans would not cause inflation. Remember that whole thing? The Germans had inflation phobia from the hyperinflation. So they married into a Germany they thought was 1/3 of the whole Germany. Turns out they married into the whole Germany. The wall came down. That happened from nowhere. The second one was there was the Soviet Union. An angry, large, broken Soviet Union trying to gobble up Central Europe and Western Europe. The Cold War was barely cold. It was a warm, hot war, actually. And as we know, nothing has changed now. And so those were the two binding forces that caused the Eurozone to happen. Because you're wondering, how could this have happened? The fear of the Soviets, and Germany was small. And so what we have in the Eurozone is oil and water. The north and the west of Europe look like this. So this is Germany, France, Benelux, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg. And so here, percentage change, what's the fundamental DNA to give you a vertical aggregate supply? Connie, what's the fundamental DNA? Perfect. Percentage change in capital W is equal to percentage change in P. But the South is Keynesian. P0, Y0, and this is Italy. Greece, Spain, Portugal. And so here, percentage change, Connie. Sharon, what's the DNA equation here? Dan? Sprinkle? Yes, thank you. So percentage change in P not equal to percentage change in W. So in Greece, Italy, if inflation is 5%, wages will go up 1%. That's the difference. That gives you a different slope. So oil and water, they're both in bed together. And in 1996, we saw that in the very first edition of my book. Like, people were coming up to me and going, how is this going to work? These guys, which is what's happening in Greece today and Italy today, these guys want M. They want increase in G. They want increase in M. Because they're Keynesians. They want the Phillips curve. But these are the guys who are calling the shots. They don't want M and G. They don't believe in M and G. The kind these guys want. And so these guys want fiscal and monetary discipline. No M and G, only increase in productivity. So this is the big problem in Europe. It was a design problem. It was destined to be a problem. It was rushed through, and they were obsessed with trying to be bigger than America. Oh, now all the Eurozone countries, the GDP is larger than that of the United States. Obsessed at that time. And so here's where we are now. These guys are suffering. They're saying, come on, increase G. These guys are saying, no, stability pact. Remember the stability pact? You can't have deficits more than 3%, forget 5%. Until now it's getting more complicated. These guys then suddenly started behaving like Keynesians. They did QE. Mario Draghi showed up. An Italian, we've talked about that, steakhouse, vegetarian, we've talked about that. And so QE, we saw Jorge's article. Didn't you send that thing about Europe? Who sent the Europe article? Europe is, Sneha? Sorry? Dara shares article about how Europe is finally stopping QE. Thanks, Dara. Is anyone reading my emails? All right. And so that's what's finally happening now. But so this is the Europe story, Dana. So what you have, it's it's not easy to say Europe. And so these guys, like Germany, had lifelong unemployment benefits. Shut it down, Angela Merkel. Only 365 days. No lifelong unemployment. Shut down the safety nets. They said the only goal for the European Central Bank is inflation. They say our job is not to contribute jobs. The jobs come from innovation. You guys come up with the next big thing. And the Greeks and Italians are going, are you kidding me? Come on, help us out. So there you go. Okay, stay with me. Identification problem. And so regarding the asymmetry, Dana, that's a tough one. We're talking of, Keynesians, supply siders acting like Keynesians. That's the whole psychology here.
So increasing G can shift both curves as
What?
long as it increases productivity.
Only if it's a G that's really can be tied to productivity. So unemployment benefits, welfare payments, Medicare, Medicaid, rent control, assistance, food help. No. Highways, power grid, National Science Foundation grants. So this is the whole tug of war. What is the good G? Now please note, I'm putting good G in quotes. I'm not, Langdana is not saying one is good and one is not. This is in quotes. Okay. How are you guys doing? Hanging in there?
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at the identification problem. How can both models exist? In America, in Japan, how can you have Keynesians and supply siders? Harvard, MIT, Rutgers, New Brunswick, deep Keynesians, but then Chicago, Rochester, Minneapolis, supply siders. How? Democrats are supposed to be Keynesians, Republicans are supposed to be supply siders. How? What's going on? How can both models coexist? Here we are. How can both models coexist? The identification. We've talked about this off and on through the course, the identification problem. When we come back from the break in a few minutes, we will look at some articles from your laptop. So here we are. This is a huge problem in macro, and this is why both models can, let's put another word here, can legitimately so two diagrams. And for the Indians, Modi at one point was trying to do supply side with agriculture and airports. Still is, I think. Okay, so here we are. Two sets of squares. Exactly the same here. You won't find this in any other book too. So these squares directly observed data. And this is output growth and inflation. And so this is P and 2015, let's just do before COVID, okay? And this is Y in 2015. This is y in 2018. I'm just making this up, all right? P in 2018. So this is data you can look up, you can see. The same thing here, output growth. And so this is y in 2015. Output in 20, these are percentages. Exactly the same, P in 2015 and P in 2018. So the black dots are black squares are what you can actually see. The stuff in blue that I'm about to draw is the theoretical model. Cannot be directly seen. So let's see how Keynesians would explain going from 1 to 2. The economy went from 1 to 2. And how would supply siders now explain the same dots? Supply siders. Exactly the same data. This is why we have such an issue from 1 to 2. How will their story be different? Come on, Bara, help me here. So 1 to 2 after you finish copying. Vidya, help me here. Matthew, Leah, Chris, Eric, Amir, you swung over from this side to that side today. Yep, noticed it. Just letting you know. Come on, how would Keynesians explain this?
Say increase in aggregate demand.
Luigi, sorry, Megan.
The Keynesians would say increase in aggregate demand, and the supply side would say increase output.
Yeah, so let's draw in their models. So here is the Keynesian explanation. They would say this is what happened. Here's the Keynesian aggregate supply curve. Here is the aggregate demand curve, AD 2015. And here is aggregate demand curve for 2018. And Keynesians would say this is what happened. This is a traditional textbook Keynesian story. We had an increase in G, an increase in M, and this is how we connected 1 to 2. So what is the big deal? Textbook Keynesian recovery. Stage 2 looks like a stage 2. Now here comes the big problem. This is what the big fuss is about out there in the real world. The same dots, the same data can be connected differently by supply siders. They will say nonsense, nonsense, nonsense. No. This is what happened. Come on, show me now. Jessica, here. Neil, right, Pooja? So basically they said, here is what happened. There was an aggregate supply, 2015. Aggregate demand, 2015. And here is what happened. The aggregate supply moved out here, 2018. And here's aggregate demand, 2018. So they will say this is what happened, not that. And this is G and M. So if you copy this, so you can see that, so it's very hard to find out which is the right model. This is called, that's why it's an identification problem. How do you identify, is it the left story or the right story? Because they connect the same dots. And so my next question is, Sarah, just a second, why does it matter? Why? Is it only economists who obsess with this question? How does it matter? Who cares? They're connecting the two dots. So why are you wasting everyone's time? Who cares? Both of you guys are connecting 1 to 2. You guys in Princeton and New Brunswick believe in this story. and the guys in Chicago are believing in this story. Why does it matter, Amir? You're connecting the same dots. Sorry? Well, both inflation is exactly the same. 2018, it was 5% here, 5% there. Nick?
Maybe what he was trying to say is, you don't even need to use G&M if you just, increase productivity and innovation.
But Nick, the question is, why do we even care? They both connect the dots. Why is it even an issue? Pooja, Megan, and Dan.
We know which one we're in for policy changes.
Policy changes, Megan, wanna add to that?
I mean, if the government, you want to change it somehow, like increasing M,
So-
if you're in the supply side, could just cause hyperinflation.
Well, Dan?
I was just saying maybe we need to say which political parties are out.
So here we are, look at this. Listen carefully now. So the question is, but why is this important? I mean, both models connect the dots. So many years from now, when you look at your notes, this will jump back at you. Both models connect the same dots. Same black squares. Okay, come on, give me the answer.
Well, I feel like it's kind of what you said about history, right? It's like you have to know your history to know the future, so it's kind of, if we know what elements got us to where we are, and form in the future of what needs to be repeated and what doesn't.
Yeah, Jessica, Dana, Dave.
There is no stage 3.
Yeah, no stage 3. So look here. Here, the good stuff, listen carefully now, and then we have our break. The good stuff, the multiplier effect, comes from GNM, right? Good old textbook stage 2. Out here, please note, what would happen, let's call this case 2. This is case 1. So in 2, if we only had an increase in GNM, what would happen? You only had GNM in this case. Out here, in 1, the increase in Y and jobs came from GNM. But what would happen if we only did GNM in 2? Only GNM. Mark? Yes, you would come to point 3 here. And so we would only reach 3, only higher inflation and no increase in Y. Who did this? Who was caught in the wrong model and in GNM?
Hoover. Said Hoover.
No, in this exact same story, Solomon, paradigm shift was another paradigm shift where we did GNM and all we got was inflation last class. What? Yes. And so, Jimmy Carter. Sweet man, good human being, builds homes for poor people even now, but no macro. God bless him. And no C-bar management. God bless him. Okay, so here we are. So there's nothing. You only get more inflation. And so in case 2, into the increase in Y and jobs comes from the shift in aggregate supply. So this is why it's important. Which policies will you adopt? If you're in the wrong, if it's a Keynesian model, if it's in the Keynesian economy, and you do supply side, you're going to be left with a Jimmy Carter story, with high inflation, and wondering what the heck happened. And then comes a Reagan who pushes a supply side budget. Who knows? This might happen with Biden. In a few months, we talk about lots of talk of stagflation again. Is it going to be a 70s like stagflation? No, but the way it's creeping back up. And so what you have here, in this case, the increase in wine jobs comes from aggregate supply shift. And so this is why it is very important to know which is the model, which is the right model. Because God forbid you're ordering Italian food in an Indian restaurant, it's going to be bad. God forbid you're enacting Keynesian policies in the supply side world, you got a Jimmy Carter situation. Or a Herbert Hoover situation. So there you go. And please understand, this identification problem is not that preposterous. We have it in physics too. Those of you who know your physics, in physics we have the wave nature of physics, and we have the particle nature of physics. Electrons, neutrons, that sort of thing. And they both coexist. They both explain reality equally well. Somebody in class actually mentioned this to me. So their comment was, Farooq, this is also in physics. You have several models all explaining reality. And so this is the identification problem. This is why we are stuck in macro. And when you have time series data linked by time from quarter to quarter, week to week, you have 16 papers telling you the world looks like this, and another 16 papers telling you our world looks like this. So in mature economies, America, Japan, maybe Western Europe, UK, there's a bunch of people saying this, another bunch of people saying that, and depending on who's in power, I think Biden is right to be a Keynesian, large G. We need infrastructure spending. Keynes 2.0, we really needed that in this country. For now. So, anyway, that's the identification problem. Questions, comments?
In the second scenario, if they had not increased the GNM, then the two dots would not have been like that, right?
Yeah, in the second scenario, yeah. So I'm just pointing out that in this scenario, if you only did GNM, you would get there.
The points 1 and 2 will only be possible if we...
Yeah, so please understand, this GNM I've shown you here, thank you, Mito. Please make a note here. Shifts both in 1 and 2, thank you, Mito. In 1 and 2, the aggregate demand shifts are the same always. So if G and M had indeed increased between 2015 and 2018, the AD shifts to the right. And so the AD shifts are just capturing what had in this story happened already. So it's mimicking. So in this story, between 2015 and 2018, G went up, M went up, deregulation happened, productivity happened, all these things happened. And you have these two diagrams. And one of them is the right one. And again, depends on the percentage change in P and W, are they the same? And after, in our world here, what's terrifying to me is after, what's the tractor company? John Deere increased W. Suddenly other companies started increasing W to match P. And suddenly you have percentage change in P, once again in America, is equaling percentage change in W. And the more inflation goes up, the more W is going up. And once the genie is out of the bottle, you can't have that union getting increase in W, and those two unions saying, no, we don't want it. They will want it too. And so the deep click comment here is Biden's world going from a Keynesian world, like this, to a world like that? Maybe not now, maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year, who knows? But that's the deep click interpretation. Doing this, Yeah, Jose.
Professor, how about subsidies? Is subsidy a key or is it taxes?
Let's promise you next week after the exams, I'm going to show you this. It's not in this diagram. It's a whole different story. I'll show you the strategic trade story. But for you, subsidies eventually would be a shift in the aggregate supply. So that's the net result will be somehow getting producers. So if you want to subsidize semiconductors, these two guys and these three ladies are working in semiconductors, and you're giving them a 40% or no taxes for the first year, like Ireland did. Ireland said, come to Ireland, build computers, no taxes, 5 years. Dell was there, Gateway was there. Ireland became the Celtic tiger overnight, you know. And so give them 0 taxes. Or if it's supply side, smart money, venture capital, graduates from Rutgers going into semiconductors. That's the whole goal.
So
Now, if Uncle Sam guesses wrong and takes taxpayers' money and gives it to these 5 people, and if semiconductors is a dead industry or a wrong guess, all the taxpayers' money, gone. That's why others will say, don't do strategic trade. Let the market decide. Let the smart money decide. It's not Uncle Sam's job to take taxpayers' money and put it in post-lithium or put it in nanotechnology. Let the smart money decide, like they did for fiber optic cable. You and I paid for fiber optic cable. You and I decided that America should not make the Concorde. You and I should have said no space shuttle. But we threw money in the space shuttle, and look what happened. We had to rent rockets from the Russians. Now finally we are going back in. We lost our advantage.
I remember you talking about the Baltic Sea Index of shipping containers and whatnot. In this, is that aggregate, like, for example, if it increased, you know, it's basically that was your thing about the real output of the economy. Would you see that as an aggregate demand?
No, so she's talking about the Baltic Dry Index. That just tells you about global economic activity. So more shipping, more activity, more supply chain activity. Ships carrying more bulk cargo. So the Baltic Dry Index looks at bulk cargo. Copper, lumber, paper pulp. That's just telling you global, it's not America, the rest of the world, going up or down, that's all.
So it doesn't, it's not telling you
It's
anything
not,
about
it's,
demand
no,
or supply?
no, it's not model specific. It's just telling you the economy of the planet is waking up or not waking up.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you guys. Let's take 15 and power back up.